Hey, good Thursday evening, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. Welcome to Live Weather Impact. We have got a beautiful day. It was kind of warm. If you spent any time outside today, you probably noticed it felt a little like summer, and that's certainly been the case here the last couple of days as it's gotten a little toastier. We were 86 yesterday. Today ended up hitting 88. And the big question is, will we hit 90 for your Friday and Saturday? We have not done that since August 18th. So the forecast, we're going to lead off with that tonight, talking about the warm conditions out there. We're going to start with a beautiful view. It's warm, but boy, it sure does look nice. This is a view from our camera here at the WCNC studios off the Billy Graham Parkway. We're looking back towards Uptown. Your headlines and impacts, the 90-degree heat. That's the story for your Friday, and your Saturday will be close. Question is, will we get there? Remember, 2 weeks ago, we had a Friday and Saturday where we got to 89. Twice. We didn't quite make it to 90. That was because the clouds and a pop-up storm helped cool us off just in time. Drought concerns, we're going to talk a lot about that today here locally and with Tim. The tropics, Gabrielle's out there, but zero threat. Do not worry about that storm at all. It is a non-issue for us. Out there, not many showers. There's a couple just to our southeast, a couple towards Lumberton area. In fact, I'll zoom in on a couple of these spots real quickly because there's been a couple little showers, and boy, you're lucky if you get one of these. Down towards Kershaw County, another one over towards Lumberton, moving towards the PD region. Why do we want rain so bad? Well, because of this. The drought monitor, most of North and South Carolina is abnormally dry. It's like 75 to 80% of the state. And now we got some of the first little hints of moderate drought. Those are those kind of tan areas in the coastal plain. So an area from basically the low country up through the PD and then heading all the way up into northeastern North Carolina. So we desperately need some rain. We don't want to flood. We don't necessarily want it all to fall at once. We need one of those nice steady rains that happens over an extended period of time. Here we are at 6:32. Temperatures are still in the mid to upper 80s, and the dew points, they're creeping up a little bit. We got dew points in the low 60s right now, so you're starting to feel a little bit out there. It's not crazy humid, but it's certainly starting to feel out there. Tonight, we'll drop down into the mid 60s. That's similar to this morning. 67 this morning was not as refreshing as we've seen most of this month. Tomorrow, I'm going to do it. I'm going to forecast 90. I think we'll get close, 89, 90. We were 88 today, so tomorrow's a little bit warmer, so we should easily get there. The one caveat here is if we get a pop-up shower or storm that just happens to hit in the right spot, could keep you around 88, 89, 20% chance of that shower chance, and I'll show you what that looks like. Doesn't look like much. Do not stop watering because that rain is not going to cut it. Now, if you get lucky, you get a little help from Mother Nature. It's just an added bonus, but all in all, these are incredibly isolated, 20, 30% chances running into a shower. And Sunday, a little northeast wind should push in some clouds, and maybe a little backdoor front could cool us down a little bit. And just to show you how sparse the rain is, this is just a look at where we think the rain could pop up. Even where it does rain, these are minuscule amounts. These are not going to do much for you, so don't count on this being a whole bunch of rain, even if you're one of the lucky few that end up getting a shower. Now, I don't like the dew points going up a little bit here, and they are, unfortunately. So not only is it going to be hot, it's going to be noticeably more humid, and we're certainly going to feel it. So we could have a little bit of a heat index issue, which means could be near 90 tomorrow, could feel like it's in the low 90s, and that's going to keep the overnight lows up as well. The tropics, Gabrielle is a mess. It is a exposed low-level swirl. The visible images we lost for the day, but if you saw them, it did not look like much of a tropical system, though this evening, as we talk about it, we've got some thunderstorms blowing up on the east side. Now, this is not going to threaten the U.S. It's not even going to produce swells or rip currents because it's not going to get very strong, and it's so far east, it's even east of Bermuda, that those typically don't even generate swells or even rip current threats. So normally we'd be worried about some rip currents at the very minimum. I don't think we even have to worry about that. When you look at the jet stream pattern, you see this pattern. If anything were to develop, it has no chance of heading our way. The steering currents are just all offshore. Now, late next week is an interesting setup because not that we have a tropical system, but you see this upper low, and I'm going to point to it right there. There's an upper low there. There's a ridge of high pressure there. Notice the flow. For the first time in a long time, we might get the influx of moisture from the Gulf, and that actually would bring us a better chance of some rain. So along with that upper low, that's actually next Wednesday. So late next week, maybe a chance for some better rain showers or thunderstorms. Not that I'm looking at widespread rain, but that's certainly a better pattern. For everyone planning their weekend, I think last weekend a lot of pools shut down. If your pool is still open, this is going to be a great weekend. The lake should be packed. 88, 90 degrees. That's going to be pretty warm on Saturday. Sunday, not quite as warm with that backdoor front, just in the mid-80s. But notice the rain chance on Saturday, it's pretty small, 30%. That's about the best we could do, and that might be the highest we see for quite some time. We'll look at the 7-day forecast here from Jerry Hunt Super Center, near 90 for Friday, Saturday. Home Panthers game on Sunday. That's a 1 o'clock kick, and as I think about that, typically the early season games are pretty warm. We've been so cool, and wouldn't you know it, when we have our first home game, it actually looks like it's going to be pretty warm. And just a heads up, if you're sitting on the north side of the stadium, it is going to be super, super warm and toasty there. So if you're on the north side, that is going to be in the sun. Remember, these 1 o'clock games, sun doesn't set till 7:30. You're looking at a lot of sunshine there that is going to bake you. So just a heads up, bring the sunscreen, bring plenty of hats, sunglasses, the whole 9 yards. In fact, let me show you what that looks like here. So where the area I'm talking about is right there. So if you're sitting in that part of the stadium on Sunday, that is 10 to 15 degrees hotter. And trust me, there is no shade there, and you're staring directly in the sun because the sun is coming from the southwest at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's a sneaky place in the summer for a game. You do not want to sit there. And because of the Panthers of where they are, they typically play the 1 o'clock games. You're going to see full sunshine the entire time. That's why you want to cool. Now, the one nice thing about this, if you can get to the cooler part of the year, that's actually the place you want to sit because it keeps you a little bit warmer. So just a heads up for all the Panther fans out there. Let's go back to the 7-day forecast again. I'll show you that real quickly. And we'll go 10 days into the future just to see if there's any signs of significant rainfall. I mentioned that pattern change possible. By the end of next week, we possibly could see temperatures a little bit cooler, maybe closer to 80. But look at the rain chances, 30, 40% for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's not too bad. But also notice the average high. Right now is 82 and the average low is 62. By next weekend, the average high is 78. So even 80 degrees means we have temperatures that are going to stay above normal. So there really is not a significant cool down in the next 10 days, but we're hoping for those rain chances to pop back up as we go into next week. Also next week, don't forget, we'll talk more about this every single day. Next week is the anniversary of Helene. We'll be in the mountains all week and bring you stories from up there as well. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the another anniversary of Isabel. We're going to talk about the drought and the tropics with Tim. That's coming up after the break, so don't go anywhere. Stay right there. All right, welcome back, everybody. As always, Tim Buckley joining me from WFMY up in Greensboro, our sister station. And Tim, big story today obviously was the drought monitor, which we'll talk about, but I know you probably got a lot of messages this morning. And I feel bad because on the news yesterday, on our linear, on air, I talked about the potential for this rocket launch visibility in the morning, but we failed to mention it during our stream yesterday. But I know you got pictures, I got some pictures. And it's always crazy, Tim, that I get these images and people, aliens, comets, people who have never seen this before, it is kind of a weird thing to see, especially for those who are up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. So let's talk about that. Let's show some of your pictures, and I'll show you some of mine, and we'll kind of explain what people saw this morning, because it always throws people for a loop.
Yeah, very unusual, and like you said, Brad, if you've never seen this before, it's like when you see Starlink for the first time,
Yes.
like, what is that? This just doesn't look natural. It's very unusual. So basically, this is called the SpaceX rocket. They call it the Falcon 9 rocket. And when you get a launch like this off the coast of Florida, you wouldn't think it would be super visible around here, but boy, was it. So here are a couple of pictures, and it almost looks like a comet, right? Like we all know what a comet looks like. It kind of has that appearance. And it has what we call a vapor trail. So that vapor trail, it's not always going to be illuminated like that. But if you get it to happen at the right time, whether it's a little bit before sunrise or a little bit after sunset, to our eyes, the sky's not even getting bright yet. But these things are so high up in altitude that they're already capturing some of those sun rays, and it's scattering the light in a really cool way. And so even from North Carolina, which is pretty far away, we had a cool view. I slept right through it, but a lot of people got a cool view. I saw some pictures even from places like Pittsburgh, Brad, which are really far away from this thing, looking at this. And that was the view. I think this was in Burlington, North Carolina. So all of our area had a view if you were awake and you knew where to look.
Yeah, it's always kind of interesting. I think it's really cool because, as you mentioned, it's all about the sun angle. This is really good confirmation for everybody who doesn't think the Earth is round. This wouldn't happen if it was not a sphere, because what is happening is this is high up in the atmosphere. It's actually almost in outer space, and as you mentioned, it's in sunlight. So as it goes further north, they're closer to sunrise the further north in latitude you go. So this actually probably was more illuminated north. These were some of the pictures we got from Charlotte. And it was kind of cool. This one, actually, you can see a cloud on the horizon kind of blocking it a little bit there. And then this was a view we got from Taylorsville. The other thing that was rather cool, I saw it in your images, you could see the moon and Venus in the sky as well. Those are those other bright objects. So it was a pretty cool morning to be looking. But here's the map. That's the wrong map. Back it up. This was the map I was going to show earlier that I forgot. The Starlinks that go up the East Coast like this, that are, like you said, before sunrise, which is kind of interesting, Tim. This was about 2 hours before sunrise in some locations. So it was kind of right on that border where, hey, maybe we'd see it, maybe we wouldn't. But I think what happened is it got further north up the East Coast. It got closer to sunlight because of the curvature of the Earth, and it was able to be seen. And I do want to mention real quickly, Sunday morning, Tim, it's not the same time, but there's another launch Sunday morning at 5:20 a.m. scheduled. The sunrise is a little bit later, so it's going to be a little dicey, but we could have another similar setup coming up on Sunday morning.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm just looking at our sunrise, I should say, 7:05 at least for Greensboro. So pretty late, but sometimes these things can get pushed a little bit by a couple minutes, and that can make a big difference. But either way, if you're up early enough and you want to catch a look, maybe give it a try. Now, is this one of those that was shooting off or orbiting, I should say, a new batch of Starlink satellites, Brad?
Yeah.
Because I was looking to see if we had any visibility of those in the next couple of days. And it doesn't look like the site is updated that I usually use for that.
So yeah, that's a great point, Tim, because usually right after launch is our best chance to see the Starlinks, but until they're actually deployed in orbit, we don't know what orbital plane they're in yet, so it usually takes a little bit.
Yeah,
so we might get a surprise tonight or tomorrow. We might end up getting a bunch of viewers saying, hey, we see them in the sky, but the graphic you're looking at now, this is for Sunday morning, and this is for Charlotte. Our sunrise is 7:10. I don't know what your guys' is on Sunday morning is, but 3 minutes later than it was this morning, and the launch window is about 10 minutes earlier. So there's a little bit more of an offset there, but it should be close enough, especially. And here's the thing: if there's any delay, because that launch window is 5:20 to 9:20, if that gets closer to like 6, you're definitely going to see a giant vapor trail when you wake up. The other thing to be on the lookout for, even if you don't see a vapor trail, those non-soluscent clouds are left behind. The vapor trail sometimes is visible a couple hours later after the sun comes up. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get some viewer pictures on Sunday morning. But there's going to be a bunch of questions about seeing the Starlinks, as you mentioned, because this is going to launch another 21 of those Starlinks, and we'll have to wait and see, because it's one of those things people always want to go, can we see them? We don't know. I mean, we'll have to see what the orbit looks like tonight, and there's some great apps, and the Heavens Above is a great website. You can actually track these as well. It takes a while for those calculations to come in, Tim. So I love these things, and it's they happen all the time. I think we're taking it for granted now. They happen like, SpaceX is going up like every 3 days, it feels like.
Yeah, it really is. And if you're headed, if you're headed to the beach this weekend or something, even better, because not only do you have a good horizon out there, but your sunrise is earlier because you're a little bit farther off to the east. So it looks like Outer Banks sunrise is at about 6:48. So you might have a better shot of getting a cool vapor trail out that way. Keep an eye.
Yeah, so absolutely. So let's transition next. We hinted at this yesterday, and I know you talked about it. I talked about it today. We got every Thursday, for folks that don't know, the U.S. Drought Monitor comes out on Thursdays every week, regardless of whether you're in your drought or not. The data goes Tuesday to Tuesday, and it's no shocker here, Tim. I think we spoiled it yesterday. We saw an expansion of abnormally dry conditions, and for the first time, I think it's been in a couple months, we've got some moderate drought now showing up in parts of the Carolinas. I'm actually somewhat surprised the abnormally dry area wasn't extended even further west, but it's a pretty big percentage of the state, though, that is now abnormally dry.
Yeah, it is. So right now it's about 66% of the state is categorized as D0 or abnormally dry. I call it a pre-drought. It's basically like you're almost there, but it's in that drought condition almost. And about 6% is already in moderate drought. So those little brown, tan shaded areas that you're seeing down by Florence or places like Lumberton and up in eastern North Carolina, seems like they've been having a little bit more trouble than the rest of us. And their soils are different out there too. They're a lot more sandy and everything as well. So every area is a little bit different. But it didn't seem like anything earth-shattering with a huge change. It's kind of what we already knew, that we need some rain. And until we get some, it's probably going to get worse before it gets any better.
Yeah, and one of the things that's a common question we get is, it might seem weird, but the drought monitor isn't just about rainfall. It's about impacts. So it takes into things like crop stress, wildfire risk, stream flows, groundwater, soil moisture. It really focuses on those impacts, Tim, and sometimes you could have adequate rain for the year, but if there's a local stress that's happening, especially during harvest time, you could end up getting a drought monitor update where you get moderate or abnormally dry conditions because of some impact on agriculture. And the area you highlighted there is the biggest agricultural part of North Carolina and South Carolina is that coastal plain.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious if that's why we're seeing the moderate drought there, because that is our agricultural areas out in eastern North Carolina.
Yeah, I was reading their discussion, at least for the southeast region, and they mentioned, while the rainfall has certainly been lacking, they did mention that the temperatures have been near to below normal as well. So it's a little bit of a counterbalance that mostly what they're seeing are drying soil conditions. The stream flow and the groundwater levels are still pretty close to average, at least for the broader region. But, unless we get a big rain, this is not going to get all that much better. Maybe we'll talk later. It looks like there might be some setup by the end of next week that could bring us some more moisture, but that's a little far out.
Yeah, that was one of the things I highlighted in our local forecast, at least of a return of moisture from the Gulf and an upper low that might help us out a little bit. But let's transition to the tropics, because we still have a tropical system out there, Gabrielle, which I guess is a tropical system. The satellite image was not very impressive today at times. It looked like just a swirl of clouds.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, Tim, late this evening, I noticed when I was shown it during my 6 o'clock, there's a burst of thunderstorms near the center just east of it now, and it's showing up pretty clearly on the imagery, on this infrared imagery here. But the winds are just holding at 50 miles per hour. And I don't know if you read the discussion today from the Hurricane Center. They threw out the chance, there's a chance this thing could degrade to a non-tropical low briefly before it intensifies, which is something I haven't seen in a discussion in quite some time.
Yeah, that would certainly be unusual. But, like you were saying, with the flare-up of the thunderstorms here, people think, we're eyes on the radar, eyes on one thing all the time. A lot of times when we're doing, 4, 5, 6 newscasts a day, we're kind of pulled in a lot of different directions. There was one point I looked up on the 5 o'clock news, like, whoa, where did all these thunderstorms come from?
Yeah.
Because at 2 o'clock there weren't any there, and now we have a really nice flare-up, probably for the first time in this storm's life cycle. I mean, some big hot towers going up and everything.
Yeah,
so
Jeff, can you take
we'll see what it looks like by the 11 o'clock.
Yeah, your satellite loop's really good.
Yeah, it's a weak system overall.
Look at that, though. It went from like nothing to like a big explosion there. And there's a couple things going on. There's wind shear, but there was a lot of dry air and Sahara air layer around it as well that was kind of impeding it. But all of a sudden, it looks like it's gotten to a spot where There's warm water out there. I don't think that's the thing that's lacking, that's for sure. But it does look like the shear and the dry air might be abating just a little bit, and it's exploding. But at the end of the day, Tim, this is going to have almost no impact at all on the Carolinas. And typically we would say no impact directly, and we might hint at an indirect impact of rip currents or swells. But you mentioned the other day, and I think it's a good thing to remember, this is not a very strong system, and it's not out there as a strong system for a long period of time. So the swells aren't going to be really that big.
Probably not. I wouldn't think there's much of that at all. And, maybe there's enough to get a surfer or two a little excited with a wave here or there. But overall, the impacts should be pretty minimal. What was interesting yesterday, Brad, you probably mentioned this too, is that the center actually reformed farther north.
Yeah.
So we've seen this. It feels like it always goes in the bad direction for us. When the center reforms, it's usually farther south. But when it reforms to the north, that's a good thing. That means that it's probably going to track even farther out to sea. And in this case, if you do have any friends, family in Bermuda, maybe someone does, it is going to be a close call with them. So,
give us
that's
their
going to
number.
be
If you got,
the only place that. Yeah, I'd love to go there sometime. It looks like a cool place, but this is not going to be an issue.
Yeah, I was going to say that the people that were most excited for that northern relocation were people in Bermuda, because it went from probably impacting Bermuda to maybe now missing it to the east. So that was pretty significant, especially for folks in Bermuda, because now the track is pretty well east of Bermuda. Yesterday, it was almost right over Bermuda.
It's so unusual because Bermuda, it's such a small target, but it seems like they're always at this threat, especially in recent years. There have been so many storms that have either hit them head on or clipped them a little bit. Hurricane season's stressful for all of us, and they are not an exception to that at all.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Just a little side note about Bermuda. I almost went out there for a weather conference at one point. They were going to invite some U.S. meteorologists out there, and I kind of read up about the way they get prepared for hurricanes. They have really good building codes for hurricanes, because the thing is, not only do they get hurricanes, Tim, they get a lot of these Atlantic low-pressure systems, these giant lows. So they deal with a lot of wind and surf out there. And so their building codes, they have their structures, like the homes and the hotels, they're like bunkers. So they can put shutters up, and the buildings do pretty well. And the islands are pretty, it's I don't want to say it's mountainous, but they have big cliffs. Like the coast is not a big run-up, so they've got big breaks along the coast. It's a really interesting island, as you mentioned, but they are in a weird spot because recurving hurricanes and nor'easters and just Atlantic storms tend to always impact them. They're just in that ideal location.
Much different climate for them, kind of in the mid-latitudes, rather than some of the Caribbean islands, which are truly tropical.
Yeah. So we're sticking with the tropics today. We've been doing, I feel like this week is so weird. There's all these anniversaries. Obviously, we have Helene coming up next week. Today is a pretty big anniversary, and I'm trying to find my my graphic here. But Hurricane Isabel made landfall in North Carolina on this date back in 2003. Now, this is a significant storm because it did quite a bit of damage. And one of the telling, I would say, the biggest scars from this is it actually cut, I think it was a 2,000-foot inlet through Hatteras Island as it moved in, and actually tore some new inlets through many the barrier islands. But this was the first hurricane I covered here in WCNC. I remember it well. I was in Atlantic Beach, Morehead City area. And the reason I remember it is I slept in our storm chaser. I did not have a hotel room. We just kind of camped out in our satellite truck, as well as the storm chaser. But one of the things I remember, this had a pretty significant storm surge, Tim, because of the angle of approach, and it was a pretty big storm. I think there was 15-foot storm surge in many locations near landfall, and it caused a lot of flooding, not only here, but up in the Tidewater region of Virginia. I know the Norfolk area, our sister station up there, had significant flooding in and around the city, and a lot of tornadoes in Virginia as well. So this is a pretty memorable storm, especially for folks that are on what's called the Crystal Coast area there of North Carolina.
Yeah, and if you look just back at the history of this one, this was a Cat 5 for a while in the middle of the ocean. So this was one of those hurricanes, kind of like we just saw with Aaron, where it's big and strong for a long time, tracking and chugging all that momentum and all that energy across the Atlantic. It seems to me that Isabel is one that the size really played a role in the strength and the impact of that system. And also, to me, interesting, Brad, I don't remember this one super well personally, but just looking at the angle of approach, it's not like it's a coastal scraper. It's really going right inland, all the way up into West Virginia, for example. But when it does that, you're in trouble. And you probably had really bad conditions where you were, but gosh, even worse would have been on the right-hand side in the Outer Banks, and that's just not a safe place to send news crews to for a hurricane or anybody in the Outer Banks.
Yeah, we actually had to evacuate people. We were in Atlantic Beach, and we had to come over the causeway back to Morehead City side to stay away from, because I think the bridge was damaged and a couple live trucks got blown over out on the island. So you're right. That approach was very interesting. You don't see that track very often, to be honest with you, coming from the middle of the Atlantic straight in to central North Carolina. And you're right that I always think of it as like a bulldozer in the ocean, pushing all that water. When it comes from that angle and that strength, you're building up a giant wall of water, and that's what happened to the Outer Banks. They got absolutely clobbered.
Yeah, it's a big storm, and to cut a big inlet in, and I'll throw this up really quick.
Yep.
I know we're coming toward the end of the show, but that's that inlet.
Yep.
Right there on Hatteras Island, like you said. Always a reminder that the Outer Banks are very fragile, and a lot of that sand is temporarily there, not necessarily permanently there. And it's not the only hurricane to do that, and we hope it'll be the last one, but there probably will be some more of that in the future too.
Yeah, real quickly, Ken, we're going to show you where Helene was on this date. There was a 40% chance of development with an area of low pressure in the southern Gulf, Tim, on this date. Last year, that was future Helene. We'll be back tomorrow. Stay tuned for more Impact News coming up.